Somebody asked about insulin resistance. And so I know I talked a little bit earlier on about what is insulin resistance. Um, the ideal, when you check your fasting insulin, the range could be anywhere from 2 to 20. But the ideal range for insulin is under 6. You want to be under 6 to make sure that you don't have insulin resistance and that your body's metabolizing insulin well to break down the sugar and carbs that you are eating. It measures levels of insulin in your blood 8 hours after fasting. So why is insulin resistance so critical, and why is the level of insulin? Because insulin resistance is the cause of 8 of the most common diseases in today's day and age. 8 of the most common diseases, and I'll spell them out, or I'll name them out. Diabetes, PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, hypertension, Alzheimer's, hyperlipidemia or cholesterol issues, CVD, which is cardiovascular disease, cancer, and fatty liver disease. So 8 of the most common diseases today can be cured simply by decreasing your insulin resistance and decreasing the amount of refined carbs and sugars and everything that you're eating in your food, and supplementing your food with lots of phytochemicals and vegetables and fruits and things like that. So it is very, very critical to bring that insulin resistance down if you're trying to feel better. And so I'll give you an example. When I was really, really ill, I think years ago, my fasting insulin levels were probably in the, I want to say between 24 and 30. I mean, that was really high. And I'm a petite person. I'm very, very clean eater. But see, I was so sick. And so my inflammation in my body was so high that my insulin resistance was high. Um, and then fast forward to once I got better. So sometime last year, my fasting insulin had gone down to 6. And my doctor was like, "What did you do?" And I said, "I just got all my inflammatory markers down. I got the systemic inflammation down. But my diet is very, very clean. It has always been for the most part. But I really just tightened up quite a bit on the diet. And that really helped with my insulin resistance. There's a couple of things that you can check if you have insulin resistance. If you look at the work of Dr. Ben Bickman, he is the guru on insulin resistance. He has a PhD, and he has by far done the most work and research on insulin resistance. And he has a book, Why Are We So Sick? I believe it's called Why Are We So Sick? By Ben Bickman, Ben, B-E-N, and then his last name is Bickman, B-I-K-M-A-N. He's on Instagram. You should really follow him. He gives some very, very amazing advice on insulin resistance. He's dedicated his life to this, and probably everything that we know out there right now is partly due to his work and this research in this field. And some of the stuff that he talks about is where you have kind of discoloration of your skin when you have insulin resistance, and then you also get skin tags. And the picture that I was talking about earlier on of myself when I was really, really at the peak of my illness and before I did the water only fast, I took a picture of myself the day I got to that hotel room in West Palm Beach. I took a picture of myself because I thought I was just gonna, document my fasting journey for those 6 or 7 days. But when I took a picture of myself, and till this day I look at it, and I have so much dark discoloration. And again, I was not an unhealthy eater. I still ate very clean, very healthy, but I was just ill from very inflamed body. And so Dr. Bigman talks a lot about this with the discoloration of the skin. And now looking back, I'm like, well, that's what what I had was the inflammation, was the insulin resistance, which was making me so sick. And so that, and then he talks about the skin tags, especially around the neck. If you have skin tags, then that's a big marker for insulin resistance. And so what's the treatment? Really monitoring your insulin levels. For the longest time, and I still do, I wear a continuous glucose monitor. I am not a diabetic. I wear it for biohacking reasons. I really like to keep my insulin levels down and my glucose levels down. And so nowadays, it's so easy to get. There's a company, Free Libre, which is the one I use. Then there's Dexcom, which a lot of people that I know and family members use that. And then there's Levels. And all these three companies, I think they're all fantastic. They're making continuous glucose monitors more mainstream now. And instead of having to prick yourself all the time with blood and things like that, it's just something that attaches to your tricep, or you can attach it to your abdomen and things like that. And so that really, it's supposed to help, or it tracks your glucose. And so I use it again for biohacking reasons to make sure that I'm not having these spikes all day long. And the more I'm able to keep my levels more steady, the better I feel on those days. So for me, that was a big thing. And that's why I really went to do the water only fast, because I was really ill and nothing was working. And so until I did that 6-day water only fast, which then really brought my inflammatory markers down, really brought my insulin resistance down, that's when I started getting better. And then, of course, not spiking your insulin levels all day, like eating sugary foods and stuff for breakfast and cereals and stuff, and then it crashes. And then having a 10 o'clock snack and having chocolate, and then it crashes. Then having like a really big, plate of pasta for lunch, and you crash it again. I mean, it's just a vicious cycle. So if you can prevent all those spikes from going up and down all day long, and try to maintain a more steady level throughout the day, you will feel much better. And so how do you maintain a steady level? How do you get a very steady level? Is by high protein, so very high protein throughout the day. Each meal, I try to get at least about 30 grams of protein a day. That's my average. So the formula is about 0.8 grams to 1 gram. So anywhere from 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per body weight. And so, I always just make sure that I try to get in at least 90 to 110 grams of protein per day. And so that's why I divide about 30 to 35 grams per meal. And then you want high fat. So I make sure that I'm eating about 50 to 80 grams of fat a day. And that sounds really high for most people, which it is. But if you're trying to heal from any chronic illness, you really need healthy fats, because the healthy fats, not only they stop your insulin from spiking all day, but they also help bring your inflammatory markers down. And so high protein, high fat, high fiber. I mean, just you got to get in 35 to 40 grams of fiber a day. And that's of course going to come from your vegetables and fruits and things like that, high fiber foods and stuff. And then low carbs. And when I say low carbs, I don't mean no carbs, because, especially when you have a chronic illness, you really do need carbs to help maintain your glucose levels. But I use more steady release and carbs, like sweet potato or butternut squash, or things like that, that are slow release carbs that are actually very, very helpful in keeping those levels. So my daily routine consist of, quite a heavy breakfast with protein and fiber and fats. And you can do that in the form of a smoothie as well. I just don't like smoothie in the morning. I need hot stuff in the morning. And then same thing for lunch, and then same thing for dinner. And then my snacks in between, if I do have snacks, then they are like high protein with some nuts, or sometimes I do cottage cheese with nuts, but I was vegan for a very long time, so I was just trying to get in, hemp seeds and things like that as well. And so that's how you keep your levels from not spiking all day. So I hope that helps on the question about insulin resistance. And I'll tell you, when you bring your insulin resistance under control, where it's not this crazy spikes all day, you actually start to lose weight. That is exactly how you start to lose weight. And so it's very, very helpful for that purpose as well, if you're looking to lose weight after chronic illness. Let's see, what other questions we have here? Stephanie says, does red light therapy on stomach help with digestion? Stephanie, my research and all of my information has always been on red light therapy for inflammation purposes, for increasing blood supply and circulation purposes, that kind of stuff. So, of course, thinking about it, it probably helps, but I can't give you a definite answer on that one. Let's see. Yes, Amanda says, I never had any allergic reactions until my mold exposure. That is very, very common because your system goes into this inflammatory response, right? Because your immune system is hyper vigilant, it is hyper active. Once you have the mold exposure, and of course, the mold exposure really destroys your gut. It just really affects your gut. And so, for that reason, you are going to have these hyper sensitive responses. I was the same way. I used to always laugh and tell people I have skin, leather for skin, and I'm not sensitive to anything. And my stomach is, iron stomach, and I could eat anything until I got sick. And then I started having lots of sensitivities. I would have chemical sensitivities and electronic sensitivities and food sensitivities. And my husband was shocked for a while. I couldn't handle perfume. If I ate even out, I ate at a restaurant for dinner and like their food was not organic, clean food and the oils, I would get sick. I would get very, very sick. And he was just shocked at how sensitive I had become and my body had become. And it's sad, but unfortunately, go back to the principles, you have to heal the gut again, because mold and toxins and all these things, stress, everything, they destroy your gut. And so you have to work on treating your gut again, so the mesh is not porous and it's not allowing stuff to get through. And then also work on bringing your inflammation down. So yes, very, very very likely story. Amy says, can you put the supplements you mentioned in the comments? Okay, I can do that. Yes. And yeah, I think on this page too, it's gonna keep, the link, and so you can always watch the replays and pause. When it's not live, you can actually pause and write things down and things like that. So feel free to do that. Let's see, any other questions here? I see some recommendations here by Stephanie for what she uses for air purifiers. Yeah, air purifiers are great. They are actually very helpful. Let's see. I'm not sure I can move in this market. I mean, I get it. This market right now is insane. And so, really you have to work on cleaning up your home. You really have to clean up your gut and heal your gut so that, because your body is the most natural defense system you have. And really your body should be able to fight anything that comes your way. People used to tell me all the time, oh yeah, but mold is everywhere. Yes, it's everywhere. But if you have a hypersensitive immune system, then you're going to react very quickly. So yes, I totally get it. Clean your home as much as you can. And then beyond that point, really just work on healing your gut, strengthening your own immune system and your own body. And so then from that point on, hopefully you don't react to a lot of this stuff. Is excess estrogen common in menopause? Yes, Amy, that is it's very, very common. I wanted to, at some point, dive into estrogen dominance. It's a very, very common subject. And so you asked it. We don't have too much time, so I won't get into all the basics that I always get into with the root cause and things like that. But there's two kinds of estrogen dominance. And so one of them is when your body produces a lot of estrogen. And the reason it's producing a lot of estrogen is because you have a lot of, insulin resistance, you're having a lot of sugar and carbs and all of that. So your insulin resistance is really high. So then you're producing a lot of fat cells and you have a lot of fat cells. And it's actually been proven that fat cells themselves produce estrogen. And so that's how you really have the estrogen dominance. The other way that you can have estrogen dominance is your progesterone goes down. So for a lot of people who are really sick with adrenal fatigue and they are bedridden and they are in some stage of adrenal failure, they have what is called a cortisol steal or a progesterone steal. So your body, because you're so stressed out and your adrenals are so stressed out, and if you're in a stressful situation, your body starts stealing progesterone to make cortisol because the adrenals are exhausted. And the adrenals are like, you know what? We're done. Like, we've been doing this stress situation with you for years, and we give up and we throw our hands up in the air, and the adrenals give up. And so if you don't have cortisol, you can actually die. And so your adrenals, if they're not functioning, that's when you start taking progesterone, it steals progesterone to make cortisol. And because of that, you start having an imbalance, which I think I talked about in one of the lives, but you start having an imbalance where you have estrogen dominance, and then your progesterone is down here because it's getting stolen, and so it's going lower, and that increases your ratio of estrogen to progesterone, and so you can have estrogen dominance that way. And so yes, those two scenarios are very, very common in menopause, which is why women have a very tough time losing weight in menopause, because it slows down their metabolism, high rates of inflammation, insulin resistance, all of that kicks in. It's all a cascade. Their thyroid gets affected, and that's why it's very, very critical to balance all your hormones and balance, OAT axis, ovarian, adrenal, thyroid axis, and you can do that with food. If you really just clean up your diet and you lose weight and you lose the fat cells and you really just provide your body with those phytonutrients and chemicals, and you don't have the fat cells to produce that excess estrogen, that is also something that will really, really benefit you. I'm going to take one last question here because we're almost out of time here. A lot of questions, or a lot of comments about mold in the home. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about air samples and things like that, which, really that is really dependent on person to person. Yeah, Amanda says she's never heard that about vitamin C and adrenals. Yeah, look up all the research. It is just fantastic on vitamin C and adrenals and how critical vitamin C is for the healing of your adrenals. It was a big game changer for me. Big game changer. Amy says something about caffeine-free green tea. I looked into that and see if I could find caffeine-free green tea, but the thing with caffeine in the green tea is it's very, very little compared to a cup of coffee. And it's slow release caffeine. So it's not like it's going to give you this jolt and then, it's going to bring you down and crash you. So I will tell you, I stopped all caffeine, everything, for about 2 to 3 years. I did not have coffee, and I still don't have regular coffee. It's been 5, 6, maybe 7 years. But I do drink green tea now. But when I was really, really sick, I stopped completely. I stopped having any form of caffeine, even chocolate, which is something I needed every day. I stopped. But the catechins in green tea and the benefits that they provide, the phytonutrients and the antioxidants and stuff, is just outweighs what you can get, otherwise. So it's really personal preference. When you're really ill, I probably would completely keep away from caffeine. But then over time, if there's any caffeine that you're going to start, then probably advisable to do green tea. But again, it's slow release, and it doesn't just throw you up and then bring you back down. So all right, guys, I think really that's all the time we have. I don't, somebody said, David said, I've been on the Walls protocol for 1.5 years, game changer, but it takes substantial discipline. I know, it is so, so difficult. And listening to her story and how much fruits and vegetables she gets, it's just unbelievable. And the changes she made is unbelievable. So, all right, guys, time is up for me, and I have to get going here. So please keep sending the questions. We have so many questions and comments today, and I love this. I love this because I really, really want to keep helping people as much as I can to the best of my abilities and to my capacity. Again, I'm not a physician, and so I do not give medical advice, but I have been there. I've done that. I can talk about my own story and what worked and what didn't work, and then based on my functional medicine background, kind of what the root cause of disease and trying to address that are some of the things that I can talk about, and I would love to. So keep sending the questions, and we will have these lives every week, and hope to see you guys at the next one. Bye. Take care.